The first concept that I want to introduce you to is the usage of a Universal Resource Identifier to identify content in your application. So just to kind of familiarize yourself with the terms I'm going to be using, let me use the apple.com URL for referencing a resource. So in this case, this URL uses this scheme. This is called the scheme, http:// that's the scheme, followed by the host or the domain, followed by optionally a path ending in a resource that you want to reference. So in this case, we have a resource called index.html that lives at this domain, and it uses this scheme to acquire it. When you type this into your browser, it issues an HTTP GET action against this resource, and this is the unique address or identifier for this content. So if we apply the same concept to our application, I'm going to instead use the content scheme, and I'm going to use the bundle identifier to identify content for this application, lol book of champions, and then I'm going to follow that by a path which identifies the content provider in my application that will fulfill this request. So I'm using Data Dragon as an alias to a content provider, followed by something that uniquely identifies some content. So in this case, I'm using this full URI to identify the list of champions. So if I were to request this in my application, I would expect to get back a list of champions. Now, this is completely up to you when you're designing your URI scheme, but I might use this URI to uniquely identify one champion in my application. And if I wanted the skins for Annie, I might do this. So it's completely up to you how you do this. Here's another URI for some different content that I may wish to. I have some realm data in the application, and I might use this URI to access or acquire a list of realm data. So you can have multiple content providers in your application. So you might imagine if I had my own summoner profile, I could do something like this, which is my summoner name, and this URI uniquely identifies that specific piece of content. So this is a key concept to understand when you're using the content provider. And when you're looking around at the application, seeing this should now be familiar to you. So we use the content scheme. I use the bundle identifier as the prefix, which identifies all content in the application to be owned by that application. And then I use a path, which identifies the actual content provider that's going to fulfill this request, followed by some sequence of paths and or resources that uniquely identify content in my application.